Have you ever felt like you've been set up, or like somebody's trying to trap you in a situation or a circumstance so that regardless of the answer that you give, somehow it's going to be a painful result? I suspect that many of us have felt that way before in our lives, that we've encountered situations like that. And it seems like the Pharisees and the Herodians were trying to put Jesus in that kind of a situation in our gospel passage today. They asked him what seemed to be a straightforward question that begs for a yes or no answer. They asked him, "Is it lawful to pay the census tax to Caesar or not?" So here's the trap. If Jesus says yes, then the Pharisees are going to accuse him of betraying Judaism and betraying the hope of national independence. If Jesus says no, the Herodians, who are already working with the Roman Empire, would accuse Jesus of a tax revolt, and he would be charged for that. So it seems as though they're creating this situation where Jesus doesn't have a good way out, where he's being set up for a trap. However, Jesus doesn't fall for the trap. He doesn't give a simple yes or no answer. Instead, he cleverly teaches them that it is possible to be a faithful citizen, that it is possible to be faithful to the ruling government as well as to their Jewish faith. First, he has them present a coin that's used to pay the census tax. And then he asks them, "Whose image is this, and whose inscription?" They replied, "Caesar's." At that he said to them, "Then repay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God." Since the coin has Caesar's image, he already has claim to it. It already belongs to him. And so paying it back is not contrary to their religious beliefs. But at the same time, Jesus' answer tells us that we are also to give to God what belongs to God. So we might wonder, well, what does belong to God? So we consider, what has God's image? We do. We are made in the image of God, and we have his likeness. And so we are called to give to God our very selves, to give to God all that we are and all that we have, to entrust ourselves to him so that we can be with him forever in heaven. And we do that by living a life in loving relationship with God. He tells us in the Gospel of John that if we love him, we will do as he commands us. And we know that because he loves us, all that he commands us is in our best interests. That he's trying to guide us back to himself so that we can be with him in heaven, united with God forever. And God gave us the church to safeguard these teachings that were entrusted to us by Jesus Christ, so that we would not forget them or distort them, but so that the church can help us to understand them. And Jesus was teaching the disciples and the faithful about being faithful citizens of the kingdom of heaven, of which we are all partaking by virtue of our baptisms, provided we avoid losing sanctifying grace by sin, but also citizens in countries here on earth. We might wonder, well, what then does God tell us through his church about being a faithful citizen? Some of these teachings I have already shared in my bulletin articles over the last couple of weeks, but they are worth mentioning again. We hear from a local church document called Political Process Guidelines for Parishes, Schools, and Agencies. In that, we are taught the following: Catholics are called to participate in promoting the common good and, as far as possible, to take active part in public life. They are to know about current social issues, to understand the Church's teachings about their moral dimensions, to form their consciences in light of their faith, and to act out of their moral convictions. Among all the concerns and issues facing society, there is an order of priority. Conditions upon which other conditions depend must receive first consideration. Therefore, the first consideration must be given to the protection of human life itself. And within considerations of protecting human life, the The protection of life of the innocent, defenseless, weak, and burdened persons must have the primacy of place. In weighing all of the social conditions which pertain to the common good, we must safeguard before all else the good of human life and the good of marriage and the family. The direct and intentional destruction of human life from the moment of conception until natural death is always wrong and is not just one issue among many. It must always be opposed. This priority, this hierarchy of goods, of issues, is also reiterated in the USCCB document, Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship, where we are taught there are some things we must never do as individuals or as a society, because they are always incompatible with the love of God and neighbor. These are called intrinsic evil actions. They must always be rejected and opposed and must never be supported or condoned. A prime example is the intentional taking of innocent human life, as in abortion and euthanasia. In our nation, abortion and euthanasia have become preeminent threats to human dignity because they directly attack life itself, the most fundamental human good and the condition for all other goods. Similarly, human cloning, destructive research on human embryos, and other acts that directly violate the sanctity and dignity of human life are intrinsically evil. These must always be opposed. We might wonder, though, aren't there other issues too? And aren't other issues important as well? Yes, there are other issues. There are other issues that are important. And the right to life is associated with many other aspects, as St. John the 23rd taught us when he said, "Each of us has the right to life, to bodily integrity, and to the means which are suitable for the proper development of life. These are primarily food, clothing, shelter, rest, medical care, and finally, the necessary social services." These issues that are related to human life but are not directly associated with attacks on human life do not carry the same importance and weight as those issues that do, as St. John Paul II taught when he tells us, "Above all, the common outcry, which is justly made on behalf of human rights, for example, the right to health, to home, to work, to family, to culture, is false and illusionary if the right to life, the most basic and fundamental right, and the condition for all other personal rights, is not defended with maximum determination." And this makes sense from a reasonable standpoint, inasmuch as we must first have the right to life, because if we don't have that, no other right is important. There cannot be a good life if there's not first life. And so as the prerequisite condition, according to these documents, issues pertaining to intrinsic evils and direct attack on life, such as abortion, euthanasia, assisted suicide, human cloning, and the destructive research on human embryos, take priority. In fact, in the introductory letter of the USCCB document, it also says, "The threat of abortion remains our preeminent priority because it directly attacks life itself, because it takes place within the sanctuary of the family, and because of the number of lives destroyed." Other issues that are not intrinsic evils or are not direct attacks on life do not carry that same weight and importance. And if you are struggling with this teaching, don't send me an email. Come and talk to me in person. Jesus is teaching us in our gospel passage to be faithful citizens to the kingdom of heaven, but also faithful citizens here on earth. And so let us consider how we can continue to grow as faithful citizens, to form our consciences as we prepare to encounter our Lord Jesus Christ in the most Holy Eucharist.